what use cases Hazelcast solves, what are the problems do we solve, how we solve those problems, some of the most common use cases, and we'll also have a live demo in action, where we will see some of the key features in action, how they solve, some of the common problems in our, in today's world. Now, moving forward, what exactly is Hazelcast? Before I move on to what exactly it is, it is important to understand, as we know, that in traditional stack, the legacy systems or legacy applications had a lot of dependency on database for their data. That means, the databases would work as system of records. For whatever operations the applications need to perform, they would have to go to the database, fetch the data, and continue working, or run the business logic directly in the form of stored procedures on databases. Now we know that databases are disk bound technology, and anything that is disk bound, would that mean basically meaning anything and everything that runs on the disk tends to be slow, because disks are slow, whether it's spinning disk or even modern day SSDs. They're pretty slow, not fast enough to handle or serve you know hundreds of thousands or millions of users all at the same time concurrently. Imagine if Apple launches a new product, and there are it's ordinary for Apple to have a few millions of users logged in, all at the same time during the time of launch. And if something goes wrong, it's a bad, but these are bad optics for Apple. So things like that. So Apple needs fast infrastructure. Technologies companies in today's time, they need fast infrastructure, which is why they're building modern applications. And those modern applications, in their pursuit of having faster access to the data, they tend to use they tend to sorry, in order to have fast access to data, the requirement of having something which is based on memory, which is something which is faster, a technology that is faster than database comes in. And those technologies are purely in memory technologies, be it Hazelcast or be any other technology out there in the market. These modern applications, they tend to have more dependency on those in memory applications, which is why you see the size of the database box shrinks from traditional stack into digital stack, because now there is more and more data, which is, call it operational data or dynamic data or transactional data. Modern applications tend to use in-memory platforms or in-memory data stores for most of their operations. And databases, are now in modern days used as archives, or for disaster recoveries and so on. So Hazelcast is purely an in-memory technology, and I'll come to the details in a minute. But it's purely in memory. It's highly distributed, purely distributed, and since it's in memory technology, and it's distributed, and some of the things that we have built and the way we built them, it is able to deliver really, really high throughputs. Millions of users a second is something which is trivial for us. We do it all the time. And when you are delivering a throughput of that extent, then basically, you have to be able to work under extreme low latencies. And with Hazelcast, anything that goes beyond few tens of milliseconds is considered slow. That is how fast we are. And the platform, it has, apart from caching, apart from in-memory storage of data, it also provides other capabilities, things like running streaming analytics, transactional analytics, the capacity or the capability to process continuously flowing data in the form of stream, or perform analytics or perform business calculations on a data which is lying around somewhere, which more commonly known as batch processing. So all those capabilities are built in Hazelcast, inbuilt in Hazelcast under one platform. We will see along the session today, we will see how easy it is to deploy Hazelcast. Just to give you a preview, Hazelcast deploy platform is basically one jar file, typically in the region of 20 to 25 megabytes, depending upon what features you're using. And a full size jar file is around 25 megs. You download it and put it in your ClassPath, and you can deploy, several hundred nodes in a cluster easily. And the technology is super cloud native. We will see a demo. In our demo, we will see how technology can interact with the different clusters deployed across multiple different clouds and multiple different environments. So delving deeper, what you see on the green box in the center is basically Hazelcast in-memory computing platform. And like I was alluding to earlier, this has two capabilities. Two primary capabilities. One is distributed memory, allowing you to use Hazelcast as your data store or in-memory database. And then the other one is, the capabilities of running streaming and batch analysis, processing, compute, analytics, and so on. So both caching and computing capabilities are provided under one roof, which is called Hazelcast platform. Now, as you can see towards the left-hand side of the screen, that basically shows, the type of sources a platform can ingest or consume the data from. So let's say, you had an infrastructure of payment processing where, you can actually go here. Let's say, a credit card processing system where you have multiple different sources of, consuming or processing your credit card transactions, whether it is, in POS terminals, or you're purchasing something on your mobile phone, or you are buying something online, right? Or a simple banking transaction. So you would use your credit card, which means you would feed in your credit card details by one way or the other, either through chip and pin or swiping. And then you enter the amount is entered, and then the transaction is sent in the back end in the data center for processing. When the transaction goes into the backend data center, the processing may entails several steps, starting from ingesting the transaction, transforming the raw transaction into something meaningful which can be used in the processing, performing several business rules, several thousand fraud checks, fraud detection rules, and then updating the database, the banking database, or the financial database, what needs updating, and then ultimately publish the result. And then the results are then sent back to the channel where they either the channel where they came from, or they can be sent to various different channels. For example, if the transaction came in from a mobile phone, the results are sent back to the mobile phone in the form of alerts or whatever it is. So where does Hazelcast fit in? So Hazelcast provides that infrastructure for all those things to take place, and for all those things to happen at in-memory speeds. So basically, instead of going to the database and running stored procedures, or instead of going to Apache Spark or Flink-based infrastructure, which is completely disk-bound, and use data stores which are disk-bound, and spend seconds or minutes of for one credit transaction to happen, we use in-memory capabilities where transaction comes into the system. Since it's all in memory, the data, the reference data, which may be required for performing those transformation operation or running business checks or for detection, all that data is already in the memory of Hazelcast servers where the computing is going to happen. And then when the computation happens, computation also happens concurrently in a distributed form. Like I said earlier, Hazelcast is a truly distributed technology. It basically further means that the computation itself, is distributed, and this process is completed in a distributed form across multiple server nodes in a cluster. So there are multiple server nodes, multiple cluster nodes performing a compute operations all at the same time concurrently. That's how fast it can be. So they're able to produce results faster. And then the results are sent out. any channel you wish. Now, all this while, so that describes the direction of the traffic from your source all the way to the sink, so end-to-end processing. Now, the list of sources and sinks that you see on the screen is not restricted or limited to what you see on the screen. You can, it is just an indication. You can have any type of source or any type of sink connected to the Hazelcast platform. Now, what you see at the bottom of the screen are databases. Now, all this while, Hazelcast, can run very nicely with databases. So typically, the applications they use Hazelcast on top of database, like we saw in the previous slide on the traditional stack versus digital stack. And all the data that goes into Hazelcast cache can be kept in sync in the database. And this synchronization can happen both ways, so that your primary data or your personal data or your most commonly used data is in Hazelcast. And then you still have your database running a system of records if you wish, or for archival or for disaster recovery purposes. So that's the end-to-end ecosystem of Hazelcast. Now, at the top of the screen, you see, things like microservices and different languages. So what it describes is that Hazelcast platform, is very commonly used as in microservices based architecture. You can achieve different level of isolation with your microservices. In completely isolated microservice, you can have small Hazelcast clusters dedicated for each microservice on their own. And with a lower level of isolation, you can have one Hazelcast platform, serving different microservices all together at the same time, which is basically what is depicted at the top of the screen. So you can have microservices written in Java, you can have microservices written in C++, Go, or in Python, and they can all interact with Hazelcast, one Hazelcast cluster, all at the same time. So some of the primary use cases of the platform: in-memory storage, where you store data in the memory of Hazelcast server so that it can read data faster. We are looking at microseconds, nanoseconds to microseconds based latencies for accessing the data. In-memory computing that we saw earlier here. All these steps that we see for this example, all these steps that you see, for credit card payment processing, ingestion, transformation, validation, authorization, business rules, execution of business rules, fraud checks, and all those things. These all are the steps of the compute operation of a credit card transaction processing, which you as a user can define easily through programmatic APIs, and we'll see an example of that, how you do that, and you deploy that on the platform. So the way these things work on the platform, you basically, you put together all the instructions which are, and you define several stages of your processing, and which basically all these stages, for example, all the stages that you see on the screen, and then you submit, and you compile those stages, you put those stages and submit those stages, the execution of those stages in the form of a job. That job and the job then runs on platform continuously, and that is what we see in detail, as we go along in the session today. Quickly looking at deployment topologies. Typically, Hazelcast is used in a client server way, where you run Hazelcast in their servers in their own environment, independent of each other, and they run in the dedicated fashion. And then you have your applications connected to Hazelcast servers through Hazelcast client libraries. Like I said, mentioned earlier, there is support for different language platforms: Java, .NET, C++, Golang, Python, Scala, and so on. The other way of using Hazelcast is in embedded mode, where Hazelcast instances run inside your application instances, and this is pretty lightweight deployment. Great way of getting your hands dirty and getting familiarized with Hazelcast without having to have a separate dedicated infrastructure for Hazelcast servers. You just download Hazelcast libraries, a jar file, put it in the application class path, and you can start spinning your cluster with the application instances. Some of the deployment options that you see on the screen. Hazelcast is compatible with pretty much all major cloud providers: AWS, EC2, Google Cloud, Microsoft Azure, and so on. And then some of the platform environments like Cloud Foundry, OpenShift, and IBM Cloud, which we are all they're all natively supported. And when I say natively supported, what that means is for example, in case of Amazon EC2, Hazelcast uses Amazon EC2's own APIs to define how the cluster will be formed and define how the cluster operations will take place. So, and that's the case consistently with all other cloud providers as well. So we are natively deployable and compatible with all the cloud technologies that you see on the screen. If you wanted to use Hazelcast through Docker, go to dockerhub.com and download Docker image, download a Hazelcast Docker image from Docker Hub. So, and another way of using Hazelcast is called Hazelcast Cloud, which is a basically managed service offering, where you don't have to bother about first creating any instances or arranging the infrastructure or the hardware for your cluster, and then acquiring the licenses for running Hazelcast. No, so you just go to cloud.hazelcast.com, and you can basically define how much caching storage do you need, what kind of performance you're after, how much throughput you are after, and so on. And you can define what type of instances do you want to use for your clustering technology, and that's it. And then you basically let Hazelcast create the cluster for you. Hazelcast will create the VMs, Hazelcast will create the environment, and it will deploy a cluster for you and will give you an endpoint for your applications to connect to the cluster and use all Hazelcast services just like an ordinary Hazelcast cluster that you would use. Just summarizing the use cases, caching is where you can store large volumes of data in the memory of Hazelcast servers, and large volumes then I literally mean that terabyte scale is pretty normal and pretty ordinary deployment size for us. We got full JCache support if you are JSR 107 compatible application developer. Then Hazelcast provides JCache implementation from scratch. It is super elastic technology, very flexible, easy to scale, purely scale on demand. You can scale out or scale back in on the size of your cluster purely on demand, and we'll see those things in action very soon. Super fault tolerant, no manual intervention required if there is a failure in the cluster, or if you want to scale the cluster out or scale the cluster back in, and cloud ready. And in terms of the usability, is pretty, I think, in my opinion, it's pretty, I think it's the most or the easiest technology to use in terms of not just deployment, but also from the API standpoint, because all Hazelcast data structures, they are the direct extension of standard Java APIs. So any Java developer who has been using data structures like maps or sets or queues or topics or things like executor service or entry processors in the concurrent package, these are the exact same APIs that we use in Hazelcast. And I'll show you that, and we'll also see that soon when we look into the demo. Then some of the other use cases that we cater to is web session clustering. You create typically when you in a web application, when you have several users logging into your system, you would create a session object for the users. So you can distribute those objects. You can keep those session objects created and stored in your cluster, so that if a user logs out and comes back in quickly in 5 minutes or 30 minutes time, you don't have to create the session again. It is there in the cluster and you can retrieve it for the same user. Along with caching and session clustering, real-time stream processing, ETL ingest, machine learning inference. So you can execute you can train your machine learning models in any language of your choice, be it Python or be it C or C++. And you can use Hazelcast to execute your machine learning models. And also highly adopted technology in edge processing in IoT, in the IoT world. Since Hazelcast is, as I said, Hazelcast is a super lightweight technology to deploy and use. And we're looking at a few tens of megabytes of jar file, which basically result in a few tens of megabytes of a JVM memory when you start as a Hazelcast instance. Then you can literally deploy Hazelcast on small edge devices. There are many customers that use Hazelcast in that capacity, where several thousand sensors they are connected to multiple edge devices, and each edge device has Hazelcast cluster running inside. And each edge device receives data from multiple hundreds of thousands of sensors, and then process it, and then sends the aggregated data, do some initial aggregation, and then sends the aggregated result to the backend center. So all those things can be done with Hazelcast pretty nicely and easily. What's this? Some of the key components of the platform. One is the monitoring. So Hazelcast has its own management center, which is a UI tool, dashboard. It's a web application you can deploy it in any of your web servers, or you can run it on its own. On its own, it runs on a Jetty web server. And so this is what it gives you. It gives you a full view of the cluster, whatever servers you are using, all the clients that you are connected to the cluster, all the data structures you are using, how the data is spread across, what's the performance of your data structures, and so on. So you can see all those details in Management Center. You can connect, and with Management Center, you also get the capabilities to connect your own APM tools like AppDynamics or New Relic or even Prometheus. So, sorry. So you can do all of these processing with Hazelcast Management Center. Now, quickly, before we move to the demo, I would like to touch base on some of the key I would say concepts of data distribution in Hazelcast, because many of the users that see that want to hear about it, Hazelcast, they like to know more about how the data gets distributed, and about all the automatic scale that I talked about earlier. So data in Hazelcast is stored in partitions. And the concept of partitioning is very similar to the concept of partitioning in Java util concurrent hash maps. Sorry. So Hazelcast creates a fixed number of partitions when the cluster starts, and distributes those partitions equally across all the nodes in the cluster, so that the partition distribution remains equal and consistent across the cluster. And all the data that you store in the cluster in Hazelcast for caching purposes, that data gets stored on these partitions itself. Hazelcast creates two types of partitions. One is primary, and the other one is backup partitions. And both type of partitions live in the memory space of Hazelcast servers. So one Hazelcast server instance will have primary data in primary partitions, and it will also have backup data in the backup partitions. Now, the key thing here to note is that the backups are also distributed. So as you see on the screen in this example, we have 3 nodes cluster, A, B, and C, 4 blues on A, 4 oranges on B, and 4 purples on C. Those are primary partitions. And if you notice, the backup of node A, those 4 blue dots, is distributedly stored on node B and node C. Same goes with node B's backup, stored on node A and C, and so on. So that's how the backups are distributed. So one may ask, why do we need backups, right? Why do I need to have extra memory utilization in my cluster on my Hazelcast servers? And we'll see the reason soon. The requirement of having backups is to provide redundancy and fault tolerance in the cluster. So let's say we have a 3 nodes cluster and we want to add another node into the cluster, uh, and basically we want to achieve added capacity in my cluster. So to provide fault tolerance, to have added capacity in the cluster, what you do is you start another server node, and that's it. So your role is limited to starting up or firing up one Hesychast or the server node, either through script or whichever way you have decided to start servers. Just make sure that you're using the right configuration as the other 3 nodes in the cluster are using. And as soon as the node starts up and it is allowed to join the cluster, it is allowed to shake hands with these with the running nodes in the cluster. um, what Hesychast does is basically start the process of migration, and it starts moving data from starts moving my partitions from existing nodes to the new node in the cluster, and that migration happens not just in primary space but also in the backup space. So once the partition distribution is complete and complete in a way that all the partitions are distributed equally across all the nodes in the cluster, and the migration is considered complete, and the server is scaled up to 4 nodes from 3 nodes. And all of this process, in all of this process of migration or rebalancing of the data, you do not require any manual intervention. All of this happens automatically behind the scenes. Now, how do we provide redundancy and automatic failure detection and recovery? So sticking to the same example, we are using different color scheme now. B is now 3 greens instead of oranges. Anyways, so the same example of 4 nodes, let's say one of the node goes out of the cluster, whether you shut it down gracefully or you pull the plug or you do kill -9. So node B is, as soon as node B is detected to be out of the cluster, what happens is the recovery of the data which was lost on node B. So how does the recovery happen? So if you notice, node B primary partitions are green dots, and those green dots are backed up on the backup partitions of A, C, and D. So these green dots here. So as soon as node B is detected to be out of the cluster, the backups of node B's are restored and moved into primary partitions, right? So basically the backups are recovered from within the same memory location. And it's just a matter of changing the flag of a Java object from backup partition to primary partition. And what that also tells us is that recovery from a failure is shorter, is faster than adding a node in the cluster, because everything is happening in the same memory space. And the new backups are created, and here's a cast, and the recovery is complete, and the cluster is down to 3 nodes from 4 nodes. Again, none of this required manual intervention or human operation. It's all automatic and handled by the cluster automatically on its own. Now, some of the key features: WAN replication, where you can run multiple Hesychast clusters across different sites and keep those clusters in sync with each other through a module called Hesychast WAN replication. It allows you to run, either both clusters or all those clusters at the same time, as active clusters. So what that means, you have a load balancer sitting in front of these clusters, in front of your applications, and your clients are connected to their respective clusters. And all the client applications are actively participating in all the business operations. And when the clusters are configured as active, then that means that all the updates going into both the clusters are being replicated in real time across both the clusters, so that the state of the data across all of your clusters is always in sync, is always consistent. And you also have the option of using in active DR mode, where only one cluster participates in client operations and the other cluster is basically receiving updates from the primary cluster. And if something goes wrong with the active cluster or the primary cluster, then clients can automatically switch over to or your application instances can automatically switch over to the DR cluster. And they will find the state of the data up to date because it was constantly receiving the data from the primary cluster all the time. So the state of the data is not lost. Hazelcast WAN application allows automatic switching over of clients from one cluster to another. And then in addition to that, another key feature is security suite, where Hazelcast provides enterprise grade security, end-to-end TLS SSL encryption, mutual authentication based access to the cluster, JAS based authentication, role based authorization over data structures and your data. You have security interceptors. You can intercept all the operations originating from your application clients and take actions on them, LDAP integration, and so on. I'll quickly skip this. And I'll move on to demo, and we can come back to this if there is time. So in the demo, we will see a few things. So in the demo, we will see this entire transaction payment processing, how it happens and how it can happen in Hazelcast, how you can build an infrastructure that can, that is capable of processing your credit card transactions or transaction payment or payment processing and payments and all those things. Payment transactions and all those things. And the key objectives of using Hazelcast is basically to have ultra low latency access to the data, the faster computation, and super lightweight involvement of RDBMS. Another objective that we will see through this demo, we will achieve through this demo, would be to how to externalize the data and make the data available to not just one infrastructure, but to multiple other infrastructures as well. So this is what we will see in action. So we'll have two clusters. One will be running on my laptop, which we call on-prem, and there is one cluster that will be running on AWS EC2. And this Hazelcast platform basically denotes Hazelcast cluster. And on my laptop, I have a MySQL database where I have some static data created. And when I start the cluster, it will basically pull the data from MySQL and load the data into its own caches so that the cluster is hydrated and is ready to receive transactions from transaction receiver for payment processing. And while the transactions or while the data is being loaded into Hazelcast platform on-prem, the same data is also replicated across to the other cluster running on AWS EC2, so that you may have other dashboard applications that you want to use to to see the data or to see the state of the data, and that you can connect to your AWS cluster, no problem at all. So when a transaction is generated, and we will use a transaction generator simulator for that. We will simulate a transaction, a credit card transaction, and we will send the transaction as through REST, make a REST call to Hazelcast cluster, and we'll submit a transaction for the processing using a REST call. And Hazelcast will basically receive the transaction. There will be a queue, a data structure running on Hazelcast platform, which will be receiving this transaction through the REST API from the transaction simulator. And as soon as the transaction arrives into that queue, the platform will pick up this transaction from the queue and will start processing. And I'll show you in a minute as to what are the different stages of processing of the transaction. And once the processing is complete, this is my platform which is for processing the transaction. And as soon as the transaction processing is complete, it sends the result back to the original source, and it also replicates the result. It also stores the result in a Hazelcast map, which is basically, or Hazelcast cache, which is also being well replicated to AWS EC2 cluster. So whatever data we pulled in from MySQL database is replicated and being available to the other cluster on AWS EC2, and whatever result that we published or we found as part of the transaction or payment processing, we also made that available to the other cluster running on AWS EC2. And like I said, you can then further use any that data on the AWS EC2 for any other operations that you like, be it showing on dashboard or storing in database or whatnot. Okay, so so these are my two instances, and I'm gonna start with the cast server node there, and another is a cast server node there, and we'll start a management center instance. Yep, I've got a 2-node cluster. And don't worry about what you see on the logs. I'll show you things in a nicer way on Management Center. So like I said, Management Center is basically a web application, and by default, it runs on Jetty, inbuilt Jetty server. This one starts. When you start the Management Center for the first time, it will ask you to create users and their login credentials. And then once you have done that, then you can log back into Management Center with your credentials that you just created. So this is the cluster running on EC2. As you can see, I did already configure the EC2 cluster on Management Center. So this is the configuration here. This is where my the DNS or the IP address of server is configured. So that cluster is already up and running. So we have 2 nodes there, 2 members, 1 and 2. And if I go back to the dashboard, that's how my dashboard looks like. There is not much activity happening here. It's just the initial activity that really happens when you start a JVM, which is basically related to Java. And there are no maps. There is one system map, which is not really meant for any user operations. It is a Hazelcast created map, so you can ignore that. And there are no user maps as of now. So what we'll do is we will start the on-prem version of the cluster. And if you remember, the on-prem version of the cluster basically reads data from an underlying MySQL database. So I have this MySQL database which is running, and I have 3 tables. One is account, one is merchant, and one is transaction. So account table has 2,000 customer database, database of 2,000 customers with the unique account numbers and credit card details and all other several other fields. And then there is another table called merchant, and that has 151 odd entries into this, which basically means 151 different types of merchants that allow your credit card to be processed or to be used. And so when the cluster starts, the on-prem version start, it basically will load the data from this MySQL database, and let's just do that right away. So starting up, and as you can see, it also printed the messaging to help understand what's going on. The server started. I started one server node. It loaded 2,000 keys from the account table and 151 keys from the merchant table. Now let's see this thing in action on Management Center. So we go back to Management Center, the browser, and we go into the cluster. Let me just kill this configuration, and we go to add cluster config. We put in dev. We put in 127.0.0.1, which is my local host, and we save it. And when we go in here, yeah, please ignore these errors because the Management Center could not find the server, which is why it shows this error. Anyways, we have one server instance, and as we can see, it created 2 different maps, account and merchant. It also created another map called rules result. And this map is used to store the result of your credit card transaction processing. So these 2 maps account map has 2000 entries. All those 2000 entries are stored on one node in the cluster as of now. There are no backups because there is just one node in the cluster. So let's make it distributed and start one more server so that we have a more distributed nature of the technology in place, and we can see things in action, relate to it better. I just started another server node. The logs are updated, and if I go back to the management center console, I should have 2 members showing up here pretty soon. It updates every 5 seconds, I believe, and you can change the frequency of the update. There you go, got 2 members here. And now, interestingly, if I go to maps, and if I look at account maps, then we will see the data getting distributed automatically, right? All I did was to just start one Hezekiah server from IDEA, IntelliJ IDEA, and that's it. And as soon as the node joined the cluster, all this distribution happens behind the scenes automatically. And with this, since I had more nodes in the cluster, now I have backups. So the data, now I've created the backups, and backups are also distributed. All right, now what happened on the EC2 side? So let's check the status on EC2 cluster. Now on EC2, if you remember, there were no maps, there were no user maps, there was only one system map, right? But now I have those 2 maps, account and merchant, and they receive data from the on-prem cluster running on my laptop, right? So if I go back to the on-prem cluster, and if I can see WAN replication, which is where the WAN application is configured. Here it is. I call this for some reasons, by mistake, I named my EC2 cluster as ZOS publisher, but that is where it is sending the data to. It is all replicating, and I can control the state of my WAN application from here. So anyways, now that's only half the job done. Now let's start a transaction simulator. Now is the time. So I have a transaction simulator here. What it does, it basically it runs infinitely, and it every 200 millisecond it creates a transaction and makes a REST call to Hezekiah cluster and stores the transaction into the cluster. Now, before we start this, let me quickly show you how the processing is defined. How those several stages of my payment processing or payment or transaction processing is defined, and where are they defined. So when I said earlier that all your payment processing, or sorry, all your business processing or your logic is defined in several stages, and you connect those stages with each other through Hezekiah APIs, and you submit that stage as a job into the cluster. So when I started this code, fraud detection server, this Java instance, it basically started a Hezekiah instance, and it loaded my job and started my job straight away, because I'm also creating those stages in my code here in the form of pipeline. The API is called pipeline. So the pipeline is basically a set of all the instructions, all the different stages that we will be using. And then I submit my pipeline as a job to the cluster. So that bit is already taken care of, already submitted. My job is already running on 2 server nodes. So very quickly, this is how I build my pipeline. First stage is basically to connect with the source. So here I am basically connecting to the queue, which receives the transaction for processing through a REST API from the simulator. Now here, this guy is basically, receiving the transaction from the queue, and then it forwards the transaction. It basically performs some transformation operation here. It transforms the data or the raw transaction into a Java object called transaction here, and then it passes on that Java object to the next stage of the processing, which is called applying merchant rules and applying historical transaction rules. Now, these are the 2 different types of business rules that I have decided to use in this example. And once these rules are executed, the results are then, at this stage here, the post historical transaction rules, we get the results as to, okay, the first stage was receiving the data, transforming it. sending it for first business rule, first set of business rules, which is called merchant rules, and then sending it to the next set of business rules, which is historical transaction rules. And after that, we get the result. And when we get the result, here we extract the result out of the transaction object, and we store the result into a Java map, into Hazelcast map called rules result, right? Like the map that we saw on Management Center. And at the same time, I am in this, just in the sake of this, in this particular example, I'm also writing the result into yet another Hazelcast queue. And that I'm doing because I have another client application, which is basically listening from that queue. And, as soon as the result comes into that other, the second queue, it basically makes a REST call, gets the result, and, bring it into the application space. That's for other purposes. But the objective that I'm trying to achieve here is basically to show you that how once you have executed your business transaction, you can write your output to multiple things at the same time. So multiple channels at the same time. Now, let's see this real quick. We are short on time. All right, so let's start the transaction simulator. Where are you? Here. This client. So here is my simulator. This is publishing thing. This is basically creating a transaction, and it's making a REST call to publish data on Hazelcast queue. Let's do this. Let's fire this. And as soon as it starts, it connects with both Hazelcast nodes in the cluster, and it starts submitting transaction. And now these transactions are being submitted and should reflect on one of the consoles of one of the servers. So all these transactions are being processed in real time. So this transactions test client is submitting transactions for processing to the cluster, and my cluster is literally processing them in real time as and when they arrive. Now, going to the management center in on-prem cluster, we can see we have two clients currently connected. One is Man Center client, which is Management Center client. You can ignore that. The other one is the client, which is basically our client, the test client, the simulator, the transaction simulator. So if you go to maps, here we see 236 transactions have been processed, and the results have been generated and stored in this map, the rules result map, right? And if I go into the queue, we will see that there is one queue which is almost always empty. It is a queue which receives the transaction from through the REST API. And why is it zero? Because as soon as the transaction comes, my job picks it up, so it's always zero. So there's no latency, there's no lag between them. But this guy here is basically the queue that stores the result, which is the result of a job processing. Now, before I go to the EC2 cluster, let me quickly show you what's happening on the computation side. So all of these things that we saw was on caching side now, but how do we see the pipeline? What is happening to the job? What is happening to the pipeline? So when we go to the Jet dashboard here, we have all these different metrics. And if you go to jobs, there is this fraud detection job, which is currently running. So if I click on this shows me my pipeline. Literally the pipeline that I showed you in the code, it is the same very pipeline. So if I click on the transaction queue, it basically is the queue that is receiving transaction, the raw transaction. Now, if I click on the next stage of the pipeline, we see that there are multiple stages, all consolidated in one view of the pipeline transformation of the data, merchant rules and historical transaction rules. And then the next stage is basically, just reduce the size, the two things. So one is where we are writing the result, publish the result to the Hazelcast map, and the other one is where we are publishing the result to the Hazelcast queue. And all of this is constantly happening, continuously running. Now I can, if I want, I can suspend my job from here. I can cancel job execution from here, and that will basically kill the job which is currently running in my cluster. Now let's take a look at what's happening on the EC2 cluster. When I go to EC2 running on AWS, there is one more map, and it is called rules result. So again, the result that are the results of payment processing, which are being published on the on-prem side, on the source cluster, are also being then replicated into my target cluster, into running on EC2. So I've got the same data set now being available at multiple different locations. And it is just one example of running one cluster, a WAN replicate cluster. You can run as many clusters in different locations all at the same time. And we can have the same mechanism of replicating data to all those clusters all at the same time. All right, cool. I think that is all I wanted to cover today. So I think I'll just pause here for now and I'll take any questions.
Hey, thanks, Rahul. Interesting demo. You make it look so easy, you know.
I'm sorry. Thank you. And I'm sorry I went over the time a little. It's just that, you know, I just wanted to.
We're almost to the hour, but I'm not sure about the audience, whether do they have any questions, but I do have some, right? So Rahul, just curious, right? So I see pretty much most part of the demos are using Java. So will it be able to support applications written in other programming languages?
Yeah, sure. So like I said, we have support for multiple different languages. Let me quickly show my screen, and I can show you where you can get more information about different languages. So if you go to docs.hazelcast.com, you will see all these different clients, right? So Java, .NET, C++, Node.js, Python, Go, Rust, and Memcache. And you know, pretty much all these clients, they have their own set of code samples, application examples already built in. So you can go and try those things. You know, on your own. It's not a problem.
Okay, cool. And I'm just wondering, right? So how easy it is, right, for an existing application to, you know, to be changed, right, to cater for this set of technology? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, look, if you are already using Java APIs, like I mentioned earlier, now things like you know, maps or data structures, like other data structures like queues and sets and so on, then it's pretty straightforward. You know, 1.5 line of code change, and you can convert your standalone application into a distributed application. That said, we are also releasing some of the very important features, things like fully NC SQL support, which when launched, you know, will not require any code change in the application if you are running, you know, for example, SQL queries. If most of your business logic is stored on database and you are making extensive use of database running SQL queries, you know, you may have thousands of tables and, you know, different several hundred queries and so on. Then without having to change any of those those components of your application stack, no need to change a database, no need to change your SQL queries. Just start a Hazelcast cluster, a couple of configurational changes, and you will continue. You will be able to continue to use your same SQL queries, but will use Hazelcast as your data store, which basically means getting in-memory, getting the benefit of in-memory speeds, right? So all those things, you know, will make using Hazelcast very, very, very easy. If you want to get a preview of you know, NC SQL, it's already available in 4.2. If you go to documentation, there's this chapter on SQL. It is in beta, as you can see. The warning is not meant for production use, but you know, the fully productionized you know, version will come out soon, in a month and a half time.
Okay, cool. We have a question, right, from Ji Sing, right? So Ji Sing is asking, you know, how are the differences between Hazelcast and Apache Ignite? Yeah.
Many. Uh, you know, but the most important difference is performance. You know, pick up the roadmap and sorry, pick up the products and put them into testing and see the performance, not just from, you know, the speed and latencies point of view, but also see how which technology is more stable, and you will find lot of differences there. Apache Ignite is community-driven, community-maintained technology, while Hazelcast platform is completely Hazelcast, created Hazelcast maintained, ecosystem, which basically ensures the quality of the software that you get. And at the same time, there are a lot of differences in terms of the features, like we provide compute capabilities, stream processing, batch processing, analytics capabilities. Even today, a lot of our customers are already using Hazelcast in that capacity, which Ignite doesn't have, right? So the performance, stability, and feature parity, the key three differences.
All right, cool. Thanks. I think there's no more questions, and anyway, we are also past the hour, right? Thanks, Rahul, for the interesting sharing, right? Appreciate you taking time out to share with the audience here, right? And this is the end of our webinar.